Obviously, everyone can build features a lot faster with AI. Like I keep hearing this concept in B2B that like, what are we differentiating off of if we can't differentiate just on feature functionality anymore? And I think a really great sales cycle is a big part of it. If it's really easy to see the product, get hands-on, if you have a delightful experience, that's going to stand out because you're like, okay, this company is with me. And if there's 5 companies that all do the same thing, you're probably going to choose the one who you had the best experience with.
You're listening to The Sticky CMO, the podcast for marketing leaders who want to become indispensable. Let's jump to the conversation. Hello and welcome. Today I'm talking to Natalie Marcotullio, head of growth and product marketing at Navattic. Natalie is quite an influencer in the SaaS and product marketing space, and she actually joined me a few years ago on this very podcast where we were discussing the no-code future of marketing. Natalie, nice to see you again.
Yeah, so nice to see you. And how funny it is to think about a few years ago when we were talking about like no code, now knowing like the AI and vibe coding era. It seems kind of obvious, or it's just like such a different iteration of it. So I'm excited to come back and talk about how things have changed, just a little bit over these past few years.
Yeah, actually, that was going to be my first question is like, so we had this no code era, and I feel like there was a lot of resistance there to no code, or at least what I was seeing in marketing. And now we've got AI and we've got vibe coding. So how have things changed and how have they stayed the same?
Yeah, I'm thinking about for myself as a marketer. It's funny because in a way, I almost feel like the AI has made me kind of learn coding again. When I first started doing marketing, I was digital marketer, growth hacker. And I remember if I wanted to make changes to a landing page, like I actually had to edit the HTML, CSS. Like I think a lot of marketers 10 years ago actually did know some HTML, CSS. Then the rise of no code came, which enabled a lot more marketers to make updates without needing to know those more technical skills. But funny enough, now I'm using Cursor to update our website. And now I'm finding myself remembering a little bit. While yes, the AI is helping a lot, I still have to understand the basics to kind of understand what's going on. So it's almost like an era where marketers can now be more technical because we have a little bit of help versus the no-code era, which is still very helpful as well, was just like, we'll replace anything technical with everything being no-code.
Yeah, I feel like one of the things that even though all of this makes life so much easier and accelerates things, like we need that technical knowledge to know what we're putting out isn't going to break. I'm seeing a lot of folks vibe coding apps without having any security knowledge. So though these things can accelerate our abilities, those foundations of understanding the technical aspects are still, critically important.
And even I just find the basics of understanding like what some of the different HTML or CSS elements mean. It means that when it's making a change, I'm like, oh yes, that looks correct. I understand what it's doing versus almost it's like I know the basics of a language versus being not fluent or not understanding it at all.
I like that a lot. And so how is Navattic leveraging this? I mean, we've got no code, we've got AI, and also with coding becoming, I guess, quote unquote, easier. How is Navattic adapting and how are you seeing your customers actually? Are they changing their leveraging of the product or what's going on there?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference is like every single marketing asset, it's like now that 0 to 1 phase can really be automated. So that was a lot of feedback that we heard last year was people were obviously looking into AI solutions just to make their day-to-day workflow a lot easier. And they would say, like, I love building demos, but that stage of going from like, okay, here is an idea to getting a first draft is usually what took the longest. It obviously took some time to storyboard out the demo. And honestly, like we still have some customers who still love doing that and doing the full process. But especially for some of the newer users and those who maybe didn't have as much time, we really heard like, okay, that's where AI could help. So the biggest place that we introduced it is now when you're creating a demo, you're not starting from scratch. All you have to do is click around your product and we'll create a first draft version for you. But then for our more technical audience, because we have some customers who are like, I know how to build a demo, I don't need AI to do it. We also introduced something sort of on the flip side that's called AI review that will look at your demo and tell you best practices and whether or not you're following them. So I think it's just taking some of those more manual steps that like still isn't the best demos we see come from the polish phase. So we're not trying to replace that, but using AI to like, okay, how can we quickly get you past the draft phase so that you can work more on that polish phase and then use AI to help give you some more of our best practices that you might forget in the moment or you might not know to again help with that really making it high converting. What we're not trying to do is use AI just to like pump out a lot of more demos that are low quality.
Yeah, and that actually is really interesting to me. So you must see a lot of demos with the company that you work with. So you must have an idea of best practices that are probably both broad in industry and then deeper in depth because you just see so many more than I would see if I were to ever try and create a demo?
I'd say not just see, but actually every year too, we put out a big report where we look at the top 1% of interactive demos. What are they doing differently? That's actually what we base our Copilot review product on. It's the same best practices we put out in the report. So yes, I always joke in a way more about interactive demos than the average person should or ever thought I would. Probably have seen over 1,000 demos and definitely keep up to date with not just like overall best practices, but every year get to look at, what are the top 1% doing differently.
And maybe we should take a step back, actually, and just talk about like, what does Navattic do and what do you offer to SaaS companies?
Yeah, just realize anyone listening who doesn't know what an interactive demo is probably what is going on. In Navattic, what we do is we let prospects get hands-on with your product earlier in the sales cycle, or if you're PLG, let them get hands-on even before they might even sign up for a product. And we do this we can clone your product. So we clone the HTML, CSS, and then create a clickable, shareable version that you can either embed on a website or share directly with a prospect or customer. Again, basically a way for them to try it. We always say try before you buy for software.
Yeah, and I really like that because I deal with a lot of B2B tech that's very long sales cycle. And what you see is this whole idea, for me, the whole idea of the funnel is it's archaic. We're seeing this, I think HubSpot dubbed it the flywheel a couple of years ago, where people just move all over the place. So being able to have an interactive demo that people can react and experience before they've talked to sales is probably very, very helpful. And then even after people talk to sales, like a lot of folks in the B2B buying space are making these decisions well before they get involved in the formal sales process. So it's very important to catch people early and be a differentiator there.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think right now, as products are becoming more and more just standardized, obviously everyone can build features a lot faster with AI. Like I keep hearing this concept in B2B that what are we differentiating off of if we can't differentiate just on feature functionality anymore? And I think a really great sales cycle is a big part of it. If it's really easy to see the product, get hands-on, if you have a delightful experience, that's going to stand out because you're like, okay, this company is with me. And if there's, 5 companies that all do the same thing, you're probably going to choose the one who you had the best experience with.
So one of the questions I wanted to ask was I like to talk about how we can grow and best practices and making those risks that we can get the best results. So I just wanted to ask you, what's the biggest risk that you've taken at Navattic in the past couple of years?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I have 2 answers. I have a personal risk, maybe on my own side, and then a company more strategic marketing risk. I think on my own side, one of the biggest risks is last year, I decided to take on product marketing and growth. That's why my title is product marketing and growth. Really, we realized we needed to put more emphasis on the product marketing function. And I had the most product knowledge. I was already kind of doing product marketing, but just really didn't make it a priority. And in some ways, it wasn't a huge risk, but in other ways it was because I had never been a formal product marketer before. I've been a startup marketer for a while. I've done many aspects of product marketing, but didn't go through that very traditional training. While I think the product marketing part actually went really well. I really love product marketing. It's what I want to focus on more. I'm very lucky where we work with a lot of great product marketers. So I kind of got to learn hands-on. The risk was also, I noticed the growth side kind of took a step back. And we actually ended up having to hire someone to help out with some of the growth tasks. I realized that job title was just too much to scope in all at once.
Right. You're only one person. And those are 2 very big things you're taking on. What about a risk company-wise as rather professional more than personal?
Yeah, professionally, one thing that I've always been focused on at Navattic is how can we just focus on word of mouth marketing, which is very hard to measure sometimes or enact very tangibly. But I've seen we market to marketers, they get the game, they get what we're doing. And at the end of the day, in the same way I want to buy, I just want to text 3 friends and ask them who are they using or how are they using it. Also now, obviously, with all the AEO, GEO stuff, all of the channels like Reddit, LinkedIn, G2, anything that's more user-generated, it's pulling in those sources. So it's how do you get more people to be commenting organically on that? So last year, we knew we wanted to focus in on some version of customer marketing community, but we didn't want to just build another Slack community or just label a community. So we actually built a homegrown customer portal. And we debated using a software, but we couldn't find something that we really wanted. And basically, this is a place that customers can meet, actually participate in challenges, redeem those participations for points. We have a gift shop. We have a calendar of all of our upcoming events, discussions. And it's definitely been a risk because the fact of, again, we're investing engineering resources into something that is really untested. I mean, I've seen a lot of other companies have success with communities or something like that, but I haven't seen as much this gamification portion. And we also know when it comes to word of mouth marketing and customer celebration, it's usually very long term. It's not like ads where you throw in money and you see results right away. It's going to take some time. And honestly, I still don't have the exact results yet to tell you whether or not this risk worked. Anecdotally, we can say the customers that are involved have been amazing champions, definitely some of the most vocal out there, but we're still seeing if it's going to work out.
How have you pitched that idea? Because something that I see a lot is I deal with a lot of tech founders and they're very much like, I want to see the numbers, I want to see clear attribution, and community is hard to attribute. And, as we move into a more cookieless world and there's AI and there's all these different places that people can get information, like how do you pitch that idea that this is a long-term investment and it's not going to necessarily be easily attributable?
Funny enough, I don't actually pitch it as that. And generally, all of my marketing strategies, I usually pitch something first as an experiment. Because I think if you go to your CEO, you're totally right. And you're like, hey, we're going to do this really long-term project where we're going to get a bunch of our best customers, get them to meet each other. And also, we probably won't be able to measure it for like months. Because also, probably what you're going to see from it is upsell, which is also going to take a while. What I instead would pitch is like, hey, I'm going to run this experiment. And I actually did this last year entirely manually before we built anything out, where I took our top customers, still had them participate in challenges and redeem points, but I did it all through email. It's just like incredibly manual. I'll email you a challenge, respond back. I'll give you points in this Google Doc that has all of the points in the leaderboard. And be able to test it manually and see the results and seeing the way customers were responding, right? Like these were some of our most important, happiest customers, and them responding about how much they love the program, seeing them be active, seeing them participate. That made it a lot easier to pitch than honestly, even if I came up with any numbers. That and part of this program was also an in-person portion where we got our customers together. And you get your CEO in a room with some of your best customers talking about how much they love the event and love Navattic. It becomes pretty easy of like, this is something we should invest more in. I always tell people, if you can get your best customers in a room and they're telling your founders or they're telling your boss how much they love something, it's kind of hard for them to ignore.
Yeah. And I mean that direct feedback too. And I feel like just in person is just lovely. We don't have that enough, especially after the pandemic. I feel like if I'm in this Zoom screen anymore, I'm going to go crazy.
And what's funny is I see a lot of in-person dinners and activation events and networking, but I'm still not seeing a lot of customer events. And that's what we're doubled down on is customer only events. And that's the one thing, like I remember back in the day, HubSpot used to have these hubs, which were like user meetups. And that was a little bit where this inspiration came from. And I'm just not seeing that portion as much in person.
Yeah, I feel like that is a differentiator. And a lot of the events that I am seeing are dinners and happy hours and things like that, where it's like this kind of unstructured networking, or there's a 20-minute pitch at the beginning. Part of going to these events is meeting new people and talking about how they're using products and gaining that kind of knowledge. One thing that I'm just really interested in, just keeping like a through line to this podcast, is asking people, are they stuck or sticky? What's getting marketers stuck and what's making them sticky, making them harder to ignore, getting them the results they need, having them stay at an organization as long as they want, rather than, kind of CMOs have this like 3-year lifespan. Product demos in general, like, are they keeping marketers stuck or are they helping them stick?
Imagine if I was just like, it entirely makes them stuck. It's terrible results. No,
That is a bit of a leading question for a product demo company.
No, it's a great one. I think what we're seeing is it's like any marketing asset when you're using it, again, to help your customers and prospects really learn more about your product and give them a better buying experience, 100% seeing it stick. We are seeing, one, you're bringing in higher quality leads. I think the like play of let me just bring in a bunch of low quality top of funnel leads just is not working anymore. One, it's really expensive now to get those leads. You can't just buy a cheap lead list. Two, teams are smaller than ever, so you don't necessarily have like a huge team of BDRs or AEs that you can just have qualify for them. So I do see the best marketers right now and CMOs are obviously being measured more off of pipeline and quality versus just like number of leads. So one, interactive demos really help with that. They're going to kind of weed out the tire kickers or bad fits because they actually understand what your product does now versus just reading a high level blog post about what it does and coming
and
in.
And they've taken an action to try it out. Yeah,
exactly. But we also see plenty of companies that helps increase conversion rates. It helps increase pipeline acceleration. That's the other thing I'm seeing is a lot more marketers are maybe being tasked with not just, okay, how do I get in leads, but how do I accelerate these down funnel? Because again, every lead is harder than ever to get. We want to optimize those down funnel conversions. And we often see someone who's gone through the product demo, because they've already gotten a little taste of the product up front, they'll convert faster than someone who has no idea what your product does.
And what are some of the dangers? Like if we're thinking about creating product demos, what do we need to avoid and what do we need to be very, very careful about when we're offering this experience to potential customers?
Yeah, the biggest sort of danger I see, and it's funny, running this report 3 years in a row, it's the same thing every year. It's when people think of this like a click-through tutorial versus something that shows value and has a strategic narrative. So if you're just going through your product and treating it like an onboarding video where you're like, first log in, then click here, then click here, that's almost going to be too bottom of funnel for the average website visitor. And honestly, like, they don't need to know the step-by-step of how something happens. They just want to see the high-level aha moments. So in reverse, the best demos keep it short, usually like a minute to 2 minutes long. And I tell people always focus on like 2 to 3 aha wow moments. And it's okay if you don't show like how you transition in between them. Like the end user doesn't need to know the navigation. They just need to see like maybe the amazing dashboard that gets everyone so excited, or a special table or something like that, and focus the messaging on value and focusing on the persona, not like a tutorial, click here, click here.
So like whetting their appetite versus like throwing the whole kitchen sink at them. So my last question for today is really, if there's a marketing leader who's listening and they're under pressure today, what's one thing they should do tomorrow based on your experience?
I think AI has made us work really quickly, which is great, but sometimes we forget about how important that like deep focused thinking work is to really change things and get things done. And just also making sure that if I have it all blocked out, then when new tasks come to my plate, I can quickly look at my calendar and be like, oh, actually, this week's pretty full. Maybe can I see if this can get pushed till next week, or can we swap something around? I personally just find the visual of my calendar really helps me understand how many hours I have in a day versus a checklist or a to-do list, and just keep going.
Do you feel like with everything that's happening with smaller teams, as you mentioned, with the acceleration of AI, as we've kind of talked about, that marketers just have way more to do than they've ever had to before?
I think so, because this is something I've been talking about with a few other marketers. I think in the past, if there's an idea that maybe you don't agree with, or like, we all know everyone thinks they can do marketing, right? So everyone always throws marketing ideas at you. And a lot of times you can sort of block them by saying, we don't have the bandwidth or resources for that right now. But now anyone can go into Claude and have it write an email for you or have it write a blog post. So you are almost doing more work because everyone's throwing this low quality work at you that you have to edit or change, because you can't just say like, oh, we don't have bandwidth for that now, or that's not scoped in. Now they have like a low quality thing that they're like, oh, but look, I made it. And you're like, okay, if I don't spend time editing or fixing this, low quality version is going to come out. So I do think it's a hard time for marketers. We used to be able to navigate a little more around what we can and can't do just by the fact that not everyone could do it. I'm sure engineers are feeling a little bit the same way with all this vibe coding stuff. Like, they're probably having to fix a lot of mistakes that marketers like me are making updating the website that they wouldn't have to previously.
Right, because they could control that pipeline. And if I wanted to get started with like a product demo tomorrow, like what's the first thing I should think about if I want to do an interactive product demo? Like, what research do I need to do? What do I need to decide before I really even get started?
Yeah, I mean, the good news is there are a lot of options out there, including Navattic, that have a free plan. So I wouldn't say you have to do a ton of research. Besides, maybe the biggest thing is, where are you going to use this demo? Right? Like, some people do use demos for things in like help articles or more customer success tutorials. In that case, like a video or screenshot-based solution might be okay, versus, am I going to put this front and center on the website? You might want something that really looks and feels like the product. So that's the first thing I would decide. Then I would go try out some of these tools. Again, most are free. Most have some AI assistance that's going to help you get from 0 to 1 pretty quickly. Just figuring out what you like and which demo you think is most polished. And then again, figuring out how you're going to use it. What I recommend people usually do is either do it for a new feature launch. Pretty makes sense, right? You're launching a new feature, you want to show it off. Then you also don't have to make the mental decision of, what do I show? Like, the specific part of the product you're showing, it's the new feature. Or maybe if you have like an ad landing page, create it for that ad landing page. If your company is all in interactive demos and want to put it front and center of the website, that is always the best case scenario. But sometimes if you're just initially testing, it's easier to get it as part of like a launch landing page or to add one than trying to change the website, which can always be a little divisive internally.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me, Natalie. Is there anything we missed that you'd like to share?
No, I think that's all. If you do have any follow-up questions about interactive demos, I always joke I'm on LinkedIn way too much, so feel free to reach out. Just thank you again for having me on, and been very fun to talk about marketing and see how much has changed since the last time we chatted.
Yeah, it's been great to see you again. Thank you so much, Natalie, and thank you to our listeners. Thanks for joining us for this episode of The Sticky CMO. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app, and follow me on LinkedIn for more sticky tactics.